Welcome everyone to our panel, Next Steps in Shared Collection Management. My name is Charlotte M. Johnson, Research Collection Coordinator at the University of Pittsburgh, and I'm here representing the Partnership for Shared Print and Rosemont Shared Print Alliance's Communications and Advocacy Working Group. I will be moderating today's session. Today, we'll be having a conversation about shared print programs and the way they intersect with resource sharing. We'll talk about the challenges of incorporating shared collections with resource sharing, identify opportunities for new approaches and improvements, and discuss where we see shared print and resource sharing going in the next few years. Some housekeeping beforehand. Our panelists have a lot to say about this topic, so we will likely not have time for questions or comments from attendees today. However, if there is anything we don't cover in this panel that you'd like to hear more about, or if you're watching this recording later, please drop me a note in the Conversations tab on the Pathable platform along with your email, or email me directly at cmj65@pitt.edu, and I will pass it on to the panelists to answer after the panel. Speaking of, today I have with me three fantastic speakers. Linda Wobbe, MLIS, is the Shared Print Program Manager for the SCELC Shared Print Program, a monographic program with 37 participating libraries. SCELC is a consortium based in California, serving 300 libraries and research institutes through licensing, collection, and resource sharing services. She is the staff liaison to SCELC's Resource Sharing Committee and to its Shared Print Committee. SCELC is a founding member of the Partnership for Shared Book Collections, for which Linda participates on the Operations Committee and chairs the Infrastructure Working Group and the Resource Sharing Task Force. Like many, she began her library adventure as a student assistant working in Interlibrary alone. We also have with us Heather McMullen. She is an associate university librarian at Queen's University in Canada, with responsibility for collections and content, oversight of faculty unit libraries, and shared accountability for the strategic directions and administration of the library, including budget and personnel. Her portfolio includes collection strategy, resource sharing, sustainable scholarly publishing practices, print stewardship, and shared print. She's a member of the ARL Leadership Fellows Program for 2021-22. She serves on the Keep at Downsview Coordinating Committee for Shared Print, How Do You Trust Shared Print Advisory Committee, and the Ontario Council of University Libraries Working Group on Collections and the Future of Resource Sharing, and was a member of the inaugural Governance and Membership Working Group of the North American Partnership for Shared Book Collections. She came to Queens in 2015 from Harvard University, where she held leadership roles at the Harvard Kennedy School Library and previously with the Harvard College Library and MIT libraries. Finally, we have Boaz Nadav leads the staff and operations at the Lehigh University libraries. He has a long history of working on big picture initiatives in library world, especially related to collections and the human and technological infrastructure needed to support the people who use these collections. Currently, as an executive member of PALSI, EAST, Folio, and Project Reshare, Boaz tries to imagine and help build network-level first projects, and he advocates for greater engagement between experts around daily challenges. Boaz provides overall direction to the Collaborative Collections Lifestyle Project, CCLP, and is the convener of the Controlled Digital Lending Implementer Secretariat Group. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for sitting on today's panel. All right, we'll get started with the first question. So what does the resource sharing community need to know about shared print? Heather, we'll go to you first.
Thanks, Charlotte. I would say there are two things I probably want to mention about some observations on my learning journey for shared print. And one is that it's evolving rapidly. I was first introduced to shared print 6 years ago through the Keep It Downsview program, which is an agreement with 5 university libraries in Ontario with a storage facility north of Toronto. And its original purpose was to help individual units, individual libraries with the pressures that they were having with space. But fairly quickly, it became apparent that shared print would be so much more than offsite storage. And we saw that there were lots of opportunities for deeper collaboration. And there's so many intersections of shared print, like with access, preservation, digitization, and of course, resource sharing. And so the second point I'd want to make is We talk about shared print, but there's a lot more than just the print, including a relationship to digital surrogates. So a good example of that is a HathiTrust shared print program. Of course, HathiTrust is a digital corpus, yet it has this print program that has as a goal to steward print copies of all HathiTrust digital holdings. And so far, HathiTrust members have committed to retain over 5.6 million individual titles in print that are held in the digital library, which represents about 76% of the HathiTrust digital monographs.
Very cool. Thank you. Linda.
Well, just kind of starting with the basics about what shared print is, and libraries making commitments to retain a portion of their collections to benefit future scholars, and to share that burden of making retention commitments with partner libraries. And that resource sharing is baked in to shared print, the first word share. So there's no point in making retention commitments for material that isn't going to be shared. And in our program, we limit our retention commitments to circulating material for that very reason. And so you may not even be aware. Resource sharing folks sometimes aren't even aware of all the programs that their library might be involved in, both journals and monograph shared print programs. And resource sharing librarians may be required to report statistics on the lending of those materials, which is very complicated. And I also want to make a point that there is guidance for resource sharing and access provided by the Partnership for Shared Book Collections, which is at sharedprint.org. Very simple. They have a whole array of best practices that are published on our site, and that includes the resource sharing and access best practice that is worth checking out.
Great, thank you. And Boaz.
Yeah, I think just to kind of continue with what you were just saying, Linda. So yeah, awareness, I think on both ends is going to be excellent to kind of promote a little more. I think that sometimes, the shared print programs seems to be very kind of high level type of kind of political a governance kind of issue, but it translates to daily work. And I think that this is where Interlibrary and those programs can kind of match and get kind of better at those collaborations. Shared print is a metadata resource. So, like that definitely is a matching point and a kind of ongoing developing issue or challenge also. But this is where, like the Interlibrary community and the shared print community are kind of speaking same language, because obviously systems run on those metadata schedules and upgrades and even philosophies. And there is obviously a service focus on both ends. So I think it's kind of important to remember that shared print is conceived as a service to the community, same as Interlibrary. And, like we need to kind of maybe, especially lately, with everything we do, to kind of make sure that the vision and the service is apparent. So knowing that shared print is there to service libraries and users in the long run, same in Interlibrary, is important. And also to the rationale, like, so why is it that we're doing shared print? Why is it that we're doing Interlibrary? How do we make things more efficient and all of that? So there is a lot that is in common, really, between Interlibrary and shared print, and this whole initiative to kind of think again about how we do business in the shared print world is really going to help also Interlibrary activities and other things.
Do you think that, we talked a lot about, resource sharing staff being aware. Do you think it's important for patrons to be aware of the differences between interlibrary loan and specific shared print interlibrary loan initiatives? And that could be for anyone.
I think so. So if I was a patron, like let's say in Lehigh, I think it would have been important for me to know that what I'm getting from an interlibrary loan system, like Reshare that we just implemented a few months ago through Palsy, is also a part of East, for example, and like that there is a collaboration that is thinking about long-term preservation of the material that the user is using, that, you know, it's not just like a blip. Here is a thing that, you know, I'm going to be using. Here is research that are going to be using this resource for. It's not just that, it's also preserved. It's also community cares about this particular object in governance and also in accountability, and also thinking about the next user and how that user is going to have access to the outcome of my own research and to the outcome of any other research going to be built on it. So I think users would be interested. The university will definitely be interested. I think sustainability and otherwise, you know, like when we're thinking about our own, you know, like interest, I definitely think that all those programs speak very nicely with the university goals about, you know, reducing duplication, efficiency, thinking about kind of how do we extend ourselves in limited resources and all those good things.
Linda, did you have something to add?
I think that a little bit. I think that the communication is a bit lacking because you know, you want your administration to know, you want your faculty to know, you want your students to know, you want your staff to know, but it's not always visible that things are a shared print retention commitment. And that's a little bit of the work that we still need to do to make it more apparent that material is being, that there are retention commitments on certain materials, and that these partnerships exist.
Yeah, I would just add, I think it's important though that the user experience be fairly seamless so that they don't need to go from, you know, system to system. So interoperability is important, and that they can still see what they have out, for example, on their patron, you know, list without saying, oh yes, but I have these things due at this time over here. So, you know, policies, interoperability, harmonization, I think are all important.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll move on to the next question. Where do you think resource sharing is heading in shared print programs? We'll start with Linda this time.
Okay, well, one thing I wanted to mention is that we've been having lots of conversations. The Partnership for Shared Book Collections Resource Sharing Task Force has met with OCLC a couple of times, and we're hopeful that the developments that are planned in the next year or so will allow that shared print retention flag to be actionable in resource sharing systems. And it's going to, they're still developing the solutions that will make it both possible for resource sharing librarians to build the groups that include those partnership libraries, and for the statistics programs to be written together, the statistics on the borrowing and lending of shared print retention commitments. And the things that we were really excited about is the new automated lending part of their smart fulfillment initiatives. And it's really something for resource sharing librarians to keep their eyes on and be aware that, you know, the programs or individual libraries may need to create these custom holdings groups for their shared print programs so that they can both action them in their resource sharing tables workflow, and so we can, you know, gather those stats that we want.
So a lot of cooperation with vendors, it sounds like as well. Yeah. Boaz, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Yeah, I think there is a chance that we're going to talk quite a bit about ownership and who has, you know, a legal right towards particular print materials. We just talked about it in another forum that, you know, like this question around CDL and ownership and digitization and kind of how to go from ownership to access is definitely probably going to be part of next year's discussions about shared print, etc. Also thinking about automation, kind of, you know, like there may be new ways to do things like what you were suggesting, Linda, with the OCLC and other ideas. Maybe we can automate directly to print programs. So like if we had, you know, vendors that were willing to partner with the shared print initiative or with, you know, like East or other representatives, then that's great. You know, like we don't need to worry about the next step thing that we need to do. We can ask to preserve directly through those through that bigger ecosystem. Also, analysis wise, I think that, you know, like there are many initiatives now on looking at collections and who owns them, who has the holdings, who shares even service points, kind of think about interlibrary loan activity, circulation, etc. So kind of further analysis, you know, will obviously bring to bear new ideas around how to collect proactively in certain areas instead of, you know, like us kind of maybe more passively looking for retention commitments from libraries. We may want to purposely attract libraries to collect in certain areas of importance or even extend together our reach to get to those areas. I think that definitely reshare is a development. You know, I'm obviously a champion because of that interoperability aspect and think about standardization and thinking how to bring those ideas into what the shared print program is kind of thinking of. Will also promote kind of greater means to achieve the goals of all the different partners in this this ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Heather.
I think resource sharing is fundamental to making shared print work. And so I think it will only continue to rise in importance. And I would agree with what Boaz said. I think we are going to see more digital services around shared print. It could be digitization on demand. It could be a controlled digital lending. It could be controlled digital lending like, you know, that might have, you know, interpretations of copyright that are different than we see right now. And I think we are also seeing developments with vendors for CDL, such as a new tool launched in August by Ex Libris in their Alma digital product.
Thank you. Kind of some follow-up to that. What roles can individual resource sharing librarians play in shaping the future of shared print and resources? We've been talking a lot about, you know, big vendors and coalitions, but what can individuals do? Anyone can answer that one.
I'll go first.
Yeah, okay.
Go ahead, Linda, then.
We all want to go first? No, it's okay, Heather, go ahead.
Just to carry on that, my previous thought, I think resource sharing staff bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to this conversation. And one way that they could, you know, help in shaping the future of shared print and resource sharing would be in promoting the value add that resource sharing brings to shared print. So examples would include, you know, improved access for patrons, potential cost savings for acquisitions, and responsible stewardship, I think, of the scholarly record.
Go ahead, Linda.
And I think advocating with the vendors of the various resource sharing tools, many of those tools are OCLC tools. So advocating for the ability to action that shared print retention flag. And it really helps if it's not just coming from you know, the shared print folks that have resource sharing staff, librarians, and the managers of those operations are also lobbying, advocating. And I think that, you know, we, the Partnership for Shared Book Collections, the CCH collaboration, which is CRL, CDL, Hadi Trust, we're all working on behalf of everybody involved in this enterprise. But, you know, the more voices, the higher this development work will get on vendor priorities. And it's not just SCELC, it's all the other, it's the ILS side, it's discovery systems. And so, and also volunteering, you know, when we make a call for the resource sharing task force or your own program's resource sharing committee, it needs to have a variety of people involved. So people that work in the resource sharing operation and have a deep knowledge of how those systems can be leveraged is really important, especially as we're advocating with vendors of how we want to build these new systems because they don't exist now. Your voices are really needed. And so I really would like to ask you to volunteer when those calls come out, and all levels of folks. Thanks.
Yeah. And, you know, we can also empower resource sharing staff because, you know, they're doing the day-to-day activities and stuff. I think supervisors can also empower their staff to volunteer on these important committees because they have that expertise. Boaz, do you have anything to add?
Agree with everybody, including the last comment, Charlotte. Definitely, they matter. You know, this is like if all of it is going to work, it all will depend on people that can service the users, and you know, like this is the main kind of experience that we want to rely heavily on when we're thinking about those new systems. They need to be as friendly and as useful as we can go for, like Heather, you were saying. I think that also load balancing is going to matter a lot in all of the stuff we're going to build. Think about how many copies do we need in any of the shared print initiatives every time that, you know, like we kind of go big time, kind of with lots of participants. We need to think, what does it mean in terms of the daily operations? You know, like we have more copies, then we may have more possibilities. We have, that means also that the person that will do the daily work will take that into consideration. So also kind of system to system load balancing will definitely matter. And that's another aspect that we can use their help with. And engagement just generally, you know, like we really want to, in any way, any of the things we do right now requires a lot of people that will participate in the governing boards, in the different special interest groups and other things. And we don't want to kind of do something and then regret it because it doesn't make any sense to anybody that really ends up with daily tasks.
Yeah.
We don't hear you.
Yeah, that actually leads us well into our next question. Can we talk a little bit about some of the challenges that shared print faces in resource sharing, especially like any drastic changes that we foresee? Let's see, let's start with Heather.
I think there's uncertainty around copyright and digitization on demand, particularly for full ebooks. Like if we had a shared print retention copy in print, could we digitize the whole thing? I think certainly in Canada, our position right now would be no, we couldn't do that for a full book. But we saw this, you know, acutely during the pandemic and when our libraries were shut down too, that there was definitely a need to be flexible in delivering information regardless of location, and even as we move into the future, I think that demand will continue as we increase in the number of online programs that we have. I think there are also challenges around system and workflow integration that we've talked about already, and how do we integrate new ways of resource sharing within current organizational structures? In the past, certainly from the experience here, you know, our resource sharing communities grew out of proximity because they were mostly, you know, moving print materials around, and we are not necessarily constrained by that anymore. So, you know, wanting to rethink resource sharing in a broad way. I think we need policies and infrastructures and services to go to the next level at scale. And I think the shared print really does bring us to that scale. And we see those drivers of change, which I think may bring us to drastic changes afoot for resource sharing more generally. Space pressures on campus, financial pressures, increases in new academic programs. And also within our Ontario consortia, we have just well, not just, it feels like just, for about almost 2 years now, implemented a shared consortial library services platform. So I think there are more radical solutions that are required to meet growing user expectations. And we talked about, I think the user is more concerned about just getting it, you know, getting their seamless access information, and less concerned about what, you know, avenues are being, or channels are being used to, you know, get them the information that they need. I think we need to reassert libraries' rights to lend materials to patrons, which without having these restrictions that are put on simply because of format, and have changes in licensing terms, again, for that reassertion of our rights to loan materials. It would be good to see, I think, resource sharing of unique materials. Now, that might not mean like physical movement, but certainly a digitization on demand, and sharing of maybe streaming video in resource sharing. And I like to keep an eye on artificial intelligence. I don't have a crystal ball or know what that's going to look like, but there could be a lot of, you know, radical or drastic change on the horizon. And, you know, I like to look at some of the research that comes out of OCLC, Ithaca SNR, and others regarding facilitated collections, collective collections, and collections as a service. Just wanted to mention that Lorcan Dempsey discusses libraries operating at a network level, and I think that's what we're seeing here. And there are many, many implications for resource sharing when we're working at a network level. And if we move towards more collective collections, like prospective collective collection development, that would also mean deeper resource sharing.
Thank you. Boaz, do you want to go next?
I think, you know, just to kind of continue this, there are some vendor battles, or is a challenge. So, you know, we do have kind of different providers for interlibrary loan services, and you know, we want to make sure that we come up with something that works for everybody and provide the services that we go for. I lead this other initiative called SCELC, the Collaborative Collections Lifecycle Platform, that hopefully is also going to think about print, shared print as a facet in collection management in general. So think about electronic material, digitization, and also shared print as a data source for building those tools to do things together. You know, CDL is definitely there, you know, like in between the print and the E, and kind of thinking about how do we navigate those different kind of scopes, also in terms of maybe the human experts that are gathered to look into the work, because we have sort of dividing lines sometimes in our libraries between teams around formats. So kind of thinking how to rethink those things is going to be great. Shared print has a huge potential to kind of, you know, bring the experts together, maybe also think about the human resources that are attracted to that in a different way. And international scope, you know, relevancy in general is so important. So again, you know, like the challenge maybe thinking about kind of, you know, the few that are preserved in shared print that are not heavily used or not never used, or, you know, like, so, you know, like we kind of move one layer up from, you know, like thinking, well, what do we do in our own library with those items? Now we're going to go to shared print, and we hope that that kind of solution is going to be appealing enough to whoever, like we are talking with. And that's not necessarily the case. I mean, like that's another kind of challenge in relevancy that we'll definitely need to kind of keep on thinking about marketing and communication around those initiatives, just to make sure that the value of continuing to keep those items in that perpetuity that we're talking about is apparent, that people know why we need those. So international scope, we definitely want to kind of think how we globally do more. And definitely when it comes to diversity and inclusion, an area of collection and need, we need to kind of think about what shared print can do to kind of bring more to the front issues and challenges around what we do here in this part of the world. So that's what I have.
That's an excellent point, Boaz. Go ahead, Linda.
This panel is great. I'm just learning so much, and it's so much food for thought. And just thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think if you look at the institutions that are participating in shared print programs right now, they have a certain profile, and attempting to imagine expanding these programs beyond a typical academic footprint or smaller institutions. SCELC specializes in small institutions, looking at the historically Black universities, minority serving institutions. We're really trying to imagine what are the barriers for participation in these programs, and trying to come up with the solutions for solving that in the future. But I think that both of the previous answers to this question point out that shared print is a baby program. It doesn't have a codified anything much, and it doesn't have an infrastructure, and it isn't built in. And so it's all up to us to create what it is that we want. And from every aspect, how it interoperates, how it's in the entire workflow of a library, and in the mind of the academy. And I've been harping on the statistics, and Boaz mentioned the value of the program. Well, you don't know the value of the program if you don't even know what's being used. And so we have to solve these problems and discovery. So just reflecting on some of the previous comments. Thank you.
Yeah, and that actually is a great segue to our last question for this panel. What tools or platforms do you think can be developed to enhance resource sharing and shared print? In other words, what are we lacking? Let's see. Let's start with Boaz.
So just to continue what you said, Linda, we like the analytics. We like the kind of way to the real interoperability between what we're doing in the interlibrary loan systems, but also the ILS systems, the way that e-resources work. I think that we kind of lack that drive to do that vision-driven collect. We know we want to do it, but it's not put together as a statement. This is like we want that, and I think it's going to be clearer as time passes that what are the goals that this initiative and project are kind of working on. And there are going to be lots of new things happening. So I think it's going to be kind of thriving community, hopefully, with lots of new ideas, and stabilizing it is going to be kind of a built-in component into trying to kind of be agile and address things as they go, and keep it kind of in this kind of project-like manner is going to become of an interest, I think, as we go forward.
Thanks. Heather?
I think, as was mentioned before, I just stress that interoperability is key. And for CDL or CDL-like services to work, we really need to understand the total number of print copies at play, and preferably on a global scale. That's when it really works. If you knew all the different copies that were available. And strategic planning, I think, is really important. In the Ontario Council of University Libraries, we were looking to replace our aging ILL structure, which was built on VDX. And so in 2018, we said, we know we can't this isn't just a system change. And so the working group called Collections in the Future of Resource Sharing was constituted because there are just so many intersections that are happening here that we wanted a document that had principles and policies. And before just going quickly to this is a migration issue or an upgrade issue, no, it's an issue where we need to understand what's happening in shared print, what's happening in preservation, what's happening in resource. Well, it is resource sharing, but that's not the only driver. And there's so many other drivers, including access, that we need to understand so that we don't have these siloed systems, but that all those systems are, they complement one another, and they also complement, many of our consortial members have other consortia that they are members of too, and so we need to sort of fit all of those pieces together because there's a lot of, we haven't talked about CRL, but the Center for Research Libraries, we have many Canadian members there, many Canadian members on HathiTrust as well. And they're doing, I would say, I don't think we've brought this up yet, but that collaboration between California Digital Library, HathiTrust, and Center for Research Libraries, that's they're being very agile, I think, in bringing, meeting needs and innovating. So I think those are the points I just wanted to make on that.
Yeah, so not only cooperation between institutions and vendors, but between vendors and vendors almost. Linda, go ahead.
And between programs and programs. And I think, we've talked about controlled digital lending a lot. And I also want to advocate for pilot projects. Trying to figure out what we need on a planning and strategic level sometimes needs a little, let's see how this works and give it a try. We were really impressed. We had VDX, or the VDX Lite, and we transitioned to Autographic's Share It platform. But because of interoperability issues, we and the pandemic, we kind of took a pause, but we are reimagining it. I have to say, first of all, though, that Autographics did build us a quick CDL workflow that on the spot made a print request a non-returnable if you had a link that you could share. So we had libraries that were using Internet Archives. I don't know what they call it exactly. It wasn't the emergency library. It was the match your library with Internet Archive material. And since nobody's collection was open, it was easy to claim your print wasn't going anywhere, so you could share the link. And the link went out, and it was controlled because you have to check it out, and you have 2-3 weeks, whatever it is. And so they built that. It didn't integrate with a catalog, but I mean, they were being very flexible and making us a workflow that worked for that moment. And so we decided to work with them on a shared print discovery layer. And we are going to have our shared print retention commitments in one system that libraries can download and import into their discovery layers. It will link back to the Share It platform so that resource sharing can happen through it, so we can gather some stats. We're going to give it a try. I'll be talking more about this at the Print Archive Network in January. And we like working with, I know there are other innovators like Project Reshare, and we like working with vendors who are eager to try something new and interested in this intersection of shared print and resource sharing. And I wanted to give them a little plug because they've been they've been really eager to try to work something out, and I hope we are successful. And a year from now, I will be showcasing it as a potential way to solve these discovery and access problems, and maybe a little bit of the resource sharing piece as well.
Well, cheers to all that. So that brings us to the end of our panel. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And thank you to our speakers for sharing the really great ideas. Again, if there are any questions that you'd like panelists to answer, you can send me an email. My email is right here in the background, cmj65@pitt.edu, and we'll answer any questions you have. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.